more and more companies expand internationally. This comes with a number of challenges, including in the areas of tax, legal, and human resources.
We've partnered up to shed some light on these challenges in our mini series, which is a conversation about different topics around the topic international expansion. And great to be here again today, Philip. And as we mentioned in another series before, the topic of employee protection varies quite a lot in different countries. And so today we want to speak about that topic of employee protection. What is your
Yes.
legal experience with the level of employee protection if you look at the global map?
Thank you, Sonja. Well, it's great to see you too. And as a lawyer, I mainly work across the Atlantic between the US, UK, continental Europe. And you certainly have very different levels of employee protection there. And I think we've wanted to focus on terminating employment contracts, meaning
Yes.
reducing workforce. And maybe let's focus on the two ends of the spectrum when we look at these countries, at least. On the one side, you have the US, where in many cases you have employment at will, meaning you don't need a reason to terminate and
Hmm.
you terminate, in very short timelines. Whereas on the other side, in continental Europe, and let's take Germany as an example there, you oftentimes, depending on the number, of employees you have, size of your company and other factors, but oftentimes you will need a reason and there will be much longer lead times, much longer notice periods to terminate. So certainly a wide variety that you see in different countries. How does that inform sort of an HR decision when you think about international expansion?
Yeah, absolutely. Really important. And what I have seen is that a lot of times managers decide quickly to expand into a different country and they take like geographical or demographic reasons and competition into account, but they don't look into exactly this topic of employer protection. And that means that they decide to establish a permanent employment in a country without really knowing the risks and also what it means to terminate in that country. And so I would say it's really, really important that managers are aware that this topic should be part of their decision to which country they want to expand internationally, because it can cost a lot of money. As you said, Philip, in different countries, it's very different in terms of the process. In the UK, if you terminate more than 20 people, you might have to go through a long consultation. In Germany, you might have works council, you might have social selection, depending on the situation. In the US, it might be much faster. But in general, I really think you should be aware before going into a certain country what the regulation is.
For sure, yeah. And even in the US, some European managers I speak to, they think, oh, the US is really from flexibility standpoint sort of heaven because you can let people go, immediately reduce
Yeah,
workforce very quickly and without. And that's where I think their thinking is flawed sometimes without high cost.
yeah,
They overlook that in the US, oftentimes, I mean, process does matter. And oftentimes, employees will actually sue their employer for,
yeah,
discrimination or other reasons. And because litigation is so expensive in the US, they will have a good chance at getting at least, some settlement payment because it's just hard to fight these lawsuits. So it is not that Europe is terrible and you can never let anyone go, and the U.S. is great and you can reduce
yeah,
workforce without any friction. No, in all of these markets, you will have to think very you know thoroughly. What are your needs? Do you actually need to employ people right away? Because terminating again in all of these markets brings challenges, even in the
yeah,
US. And so I
yeah,
think what's also important is think about other options, particularly at the beginning of your expansion. Think about, maybe contractors first. And obviously it comes with a
yeah,
risk, right? You don't want to misclassify them.
yeah, yeah,
But maybe you only need a few hours a week, so freelancer, contractor, or an agency
Yes,
temporary workers or other or a
yeah,
fractional employee. So I don't know
absolutely.
if from an HR perspective you share that assessment.
Absolutely. I think you should be aware of all your options when you expand to a different country. You just mentioned a fractional work provider. That's going to be a very interesting topic, even on the executive level. We're going to touch on that in a separate recording. But I think in general, be aware of the options you have and consider them thoroughly before making the first decision on hiring someone permanently. And then when you have hired someone permanently, I do think from a HR viewpoint, very important to document your case. And this might sound ridiculous to even think about termination before you have started, but in many, many cases, there is no clear case created of documentation when it comes to a potential lawsuit, as you just mentioned. And it's very hard, if not impossible, to go back and kind of try and establish a case retroactively. So I really recommend in all countries that you do your documentation thoroughly from day one.
I agree. That's all lawyers love documentation, at least normally.
Yeah, and HR people too, because it helps you with your cases later on, and it just safeguards the company to a certain level as well. It
Agree.
reduces your risk for sure.
Well, great to have that conversation, Sonia, and make the point that really it's sort of a strategic question before deciding on an expansion is think about what it means to have employees in that country and
Absolutely.
about
Yeah,
alternatives. So I look
absolutely.
forward to exchanging about fractional executives, fractional workforce in a
Yeah,
future discussion, Sonia. That would be interesting.
perfect. Me too. Thanks a lot, Philip, and speak to you soon again.
Speak soon.
Bye-bye. Bye. Na